It seems like the COVID-19 pandemic sparked what was going to be the end of the world. The pandemic revealed the cracks in the foundation of society as we know it. It highlighted various countries' crisis response capabilities, and it showed what humanity can do when its back is against a wall. But above all, it revealed what we are, and more clearly, what we aren't doing when it comes to climate change. An accurate, informed response can literally make a world of a difference when responding to crisis. This sprawls way beyond disease control and to most prevalent issues. These issues include environmental preservation and the mitigation of climate change. The task of uniting countries to fight together to preserve our planet already seems like a daunting enough task. But what about the countries that are not as privileged with the climate change education that many choose to overlook? Complicated issues require much more than political know-how. Ripping down the barriers that prevent the dissemination of information on critical global issues from reaching those who are the most vulnerable is the first step in building a coalition to deal with crisis and prevalent global issues. Today, we will be discussing the key role that information has on vulnerable countries, how that impacts climate change, and how climate change impacts disease. Welcome to FPTV. Let's dive into why countries with less information are at the most vulnerable position when it comes to global issues. Today, English is the most spoken language in the world. Global civil society tends to overlook those who cannot speak English, disregarding their native languages. To make matters worse, countries that are the most vulnerable to climate change are also some of the world's largest non-English speaking countries. This includes countries with Pacific coastlines and in sub-Saharan Africa. You might be wondering, how can we help countries that lack access to information on climate change? Countries with more information can provide the technological and scientific know-how to other countries. How would you react if I told you that countries that are the most vulnerable to climate crisis have done the least to catalyze it? These countries also have the least information to combat it. Why is this? Only about 20% of the world's population has a sufficient understanding of language to understand prestige academic writing, presenting a gigantic language barrier. Translations also create infeasibilities, making it hard for countries to stay on top of the most recent information. In these countries, it's also more likely that the information is disorganized and extremely prone to damage. In the status quo, climate change vocabulary also is presented in a manner that's extremely hard to grasp. This is why climate change literature needs to change in a way that each and every person understands its urgency. This is exactly what is needed by international leaders. It is important that economic and political changes start by presenting the life-altering impacts of climate change. And international leaders need to be unified in the way that they're approaching these issues. Non-English speaking countries will be at the forefront of disaster without any way to combat climate change themselves. For example, sub-Saharan Africa is facing a crop production decline of 50%, food and water shortages for upwards of 130 million people. These aren't just statistics. Unlike the countries contributing most to the crisis, these countries are especially vulnerable because they don't have access to technological advancements to combat changing environments. A simple example of this is air conditioning when it gets too hot to handle. There are so many global issues that can be fixed if countries unite to just share information in a much more effective way. Today, we live in the era of the mask, social distancing, and the complete utter upheaval of normal routines. COVID-19 has changed the world in an unprecedented way, and its effects will be felt for years. However, what if I told you that next COVID-19 could start in the next few months, and it could be so much worse? As global temperatures increase, high humidity enhances the transmission of certain diseases, like malaria. Likewise, major climate events such as the El Niño have been proven to increase the transmission of diseases. Now, this already sounds horrible, but the thing is, they're only the tip of the literal iceberg. The true epidemiological climate crisis will come in the form of air pollution. In heavily polluted countries around the world, especially poorer ones, chemicals harm the health of the people. Widespread pollutants such as sulfur dioxide, nitrogen monoxide, and many others not only affect the short-term health of their citizens, but make their respiratory systems more susceptible to long-term dangerous infections. For example, studies show that people who inhaled air pollutants on a daily basis were more likely to experience severe COVID-19 symptoms. What can we do to protect people from climate-induced health risks? A common proposal has been to establish local warning systems so that people can understand and plan around climate change impacts. Whatever solution may be implemented, it is crucial that we identify and work to fight against the preventable diseases that come in the wake of uncontrolled climate change. When we watch the news these days, it seems that we're always caught up in the latest political drama. However, we at Climate Cardinals and FPYC argue that something else must be paid more attention to. The climate crisis impacts every single person on the planet, no matter your political ideology or what country of origin you come from. A crisis that, if not mitigated, could spell the end of the world for each and every one of those people. This crisis must be attended to as quickly and effectively as possible. Without swift action, the lives of us, our children, and their children will be impacted for the worse. While it may seem bleak, there is hope on the horizon. We have seen how an accurate and informed response can make a world of a difference when responding to crisis. We must work together to spread knowledge of climate change throughout the world. We also must tackle the current impacts of climate change as well, such as the prevention and mitigation of climate-induced diseases. Through unity, consistency, and the desire to save the world, the folks here at Climate Cardinals and FPYC believe that we can do it. We want to thank the brilliant Climate Cardinals for partnering with the Foreign Policy Youth Collaborative. Follow us and them wherever you can. And as always, stay young, stay informed.